This is like a spot where we highlight Camelback Fellows, past and present. And so I'm just grateful that you made the time to chat with us today. Welcome, Melin, to your first Humble and Hungry. This is how it's going to work. I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions and we're going to have a conversation.
Okay.
Let's start by having you introduce yourself. Share a little more about yourself, and we'll start with that.
Okay. I'm also having a trip because I'm in the category of past fellows now.
Right.
So my name is Melinh Rozen. I am a co-founder of Euki. I actually started my career as a teacher here in the States, and then I had the chance to move to Vietnam, which is where my mother was born. And while I was there, I got into kind of ed tech and social enterprise, social entrepreneurship more broadly. I also, in the 5 years I was there, realized that most of the people making the decisions, capital D decisions, didn't come from the communities that were impacted by those decisions. And sometimes they didn't even have relationships with those communities. So what I noticed is they often had a JD or an MBA. And so I decided to come back to the States to do my MBA, which I focused on social impact, tech, and entrepreneurship. And from there, I got into social impact consulting and was working with mostly tech companies on their social impact programs. So volunteering, giving, but also literally the social impacts of their products. And I was working with mostly privacy and cybersecurity companies. So I learned a lot about that space. But I was also growing frustrated with how little kind of tech overall seemed to be considering the needs of, our communities and the potential unintended harms of products. And just as I was starting to hit that peak frustration or disillusionment, I reconnected with my co-founder, Ana Ramirez, who has been a close friend of mine for more than 15 years, which isn't like when I say that. Her background is public health research, specifically abortion. And when she told me what she had been working on with Euki, I was like 100% like, yes, that's exactly what we've been like begging my clients to think of doing. And like, how can I help? And so I initially started working with her as a pro bono client. And then, the rest kind of is history.
First of all, it's so funny you should talk about MBA because I just got off a call with someone else who's considering pursuing their MBA because they want to. Do you want to talk a little bit about like why you and Anna decided to establish Euki?
Sure. If it's a Camelback person, you can send them my way. Obviously, I'm happy to talk through that. Okay. Open invitation. So a little backstory. Anna started working on Euki before it was Euki. It started as a research question and a research project where she was working, which was called IBIS Reproductive Health. So that work started in 2017. Anna was key in that initial research that resulted in kind of the first version of the Euki app, which was released in 2019 originally. And then as research projects want to do, the funding went elsewhere. And so the app was, not being quite as actively maintained, not being updated. And then fast forward 2022, following the Dobbs decision, there was a 10x surge in downloads for like the immediate months after Dobbs with, totally organic, no ad spending, no marketing budget, just people were starting to, you might say panic, but just like being more aware of the digital privacy risks in that context. And so that was kind of a call to action to revisit the project and say, like, what is the future to support this user base over the long term, and how can this kind of like this product that was designed very intentionally in a privacy first way help meet the needs of what was, you know, a continually changing sexual and reproductive health landscape here in the States.
Still changing.
And still changing, indeed. And so IBIS is a research organization, not a tech organization. It was never really intended to be the forever home of a tech product, a mobile product. So we were assessing where else could Euki go. And again, at this time, I was a consultant supporting this project. So we were looking for a more established organization that had a couple things that we thought Euki users deserved, which was, you know, capacity, financial capacity and technical capacity, that had kind of the reproductive health credentials and grounding. And then most importantly, that really shared our approach to privacy and co-design. And we did not find one that met all of those criteria. And at a certain point, Anna and I kind of looked across the table at each other and we're like, you know, with our two complementary backgrounds, we can do this, you know. And it was kind of a I'm in if you're in conversation. And so then we started planning of how do we spin out Euki from this project that's incubated at a larger organization to become an independent organization, which happened this year in 2024.
Yeah, so we're gonna get into like what Euki is in just a moment, because I realize like you obviously I know what Euki is, you know what Euki is, but like people who are hearing like, what exactly is Euki?
Who cares?
And why the jobs like affect downloads? So like before we get into that, so you just talked about how you had just established Euki in this last year. It just so happens like you just completed your Camelback Fellowship, like
Very timely.
Yeah, it is timely. And I'm curious, like, in your journey, because as an entrepreneur, like, why did you decide to join Camelback? And like, how did we support your growth as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Why did I decide to join Camelback? I think two main reasons. One is that we were a new organization and looking for every possible avenue of funding and support
Thank you for saying that
was available to us, like just to be real. But two was, you know, I think I was very fortunate to have some entrepreneurship training through the MBA program, but it was to fit a very specific model of entrepreneurship. And it is a model of entrepreneurship that is based in like very cis hetero white normativity. And I am none of those things. Like, so it was very like square peg round hole. And I was really excited to have the opportunity to be in community with folks like me, but also to have programming that was a little bit more specific to the kind of organization I wanted to build and the kind of leader, not only that I can be, but that I actually want to be. And so that was what attracted me, besides obviously the capital. And what I was most excited about really was that community, and it has been even better than I imagined. And I have to shout out my cohort, the Bakers Desmond. Miss y'all. They are without exception like inspiring, kind, intelligent, and pretty funny, honestly.
Yeah. So folks who are listening in, so like we work together also quite a bit. So I was really grateful to work closely with you.
It's very mutual.
All right, so let's talk about Euki. So for those of you who don't know, Euki started off as a period tracker. And I know like folks are like, oh, there are a lot of those out there. But what I found really interesting, what I was really like drawn to when I read your initial application was like, oh, like how it was designed, and how it was ultimately built. And so can we like dig into that? Because I think like when people realize that, they're like, oh, now this is something I can get behind. So can you describe who Euki was designed for first, and then we'll like get into like more nitty-gritty.
So, like I mentioned before, Euki started as a research question, and it was about how can we increase access for communities that have systemic barriers to sexual and reproductive health. And so it started, focus groups, focus questions, and we continue that today. So, whereas typically tech and especially including reproductive health tech does not reflect the voices of the communities that are most impacted and most impacted by health inequity, we try to invert that. So we have a co-design process where we recruit what we call our user advisory team, or UAT. And so each cohort is intentionally diverse and designed to oversample groups that have the most barriers or most restrictive use cases. So typically Black, brown, queer. We're looking at young folks, gender expansive folks, and in kind of this political context, people living in states that have the most restrictive policies when it comes to sexual and reproductive health. And so we recruit them. They commit to serve for a year in exchange for a stipend, some learning opportunities, the community, and they basically provide input like at every level of decision related to Euki. So literally one of our first UAT cohort chose the name Euki. Our cohorts kind of define our product roadmap, like our upcoming feature priorities, like what should we design and build next, to like UX flows. So like the layout of it, should the button be on the left or how should the button layout go, all the way to like specific copy of specific text in the app. So they have input like at every level, and they really set the direction for the product and also for us as an organization.
Yeah, what I love about that is that like it's a real living example of like community-centered tech, community-driven, and one in which like there's significant community buy-in. Was it through that the work that you decided to create a privacy-first app?
Yeah, so that was the initial cohorts really defined a couple things that they wanted. Privacy was huge among them because we know folks from these communities are also the ones who are more likely to be overly surveilled, overly criminalized, and have very reasonable and historically grounded skepticism about like the health system at large. And so privacy was super important. A couple of the other things were inclusivity. So a lot of folks, most quote unquote femtech apps either assume the gender of the person, assume the race, or like default to some of those norms we talked about. And so folks didn't always feel represented or included in the language or the imagery of some of those apps. They wanted the ability to customize and adapt to their needs. And they wanted comprehensive information that was reliable because, already in 2017, 2019, that was hard to find.
Yeah.
And it's only gotten harder since. So those were kind of the initial inputs of like, what are we optimizing for? And that was what led to really the first version of the Euki app and really our commitment to privacy.
Do you want to explain to folks like what privacy first means? Because you had to explain it to me because like it didn't even like cross my mind at like until I read your application that I could actually use apps where that didn't collect my data.
No. So I wish I didn't have to, but I will. And I will give maybe like a long answer to this question, but hopefully like a condensed overview to like digital privacy. So a couple things or three main ideas for us: privacy, consent, and data autonomy. So privacy is a human right. It's recognized in the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which in a couple different articles, 12 and 19, it talks about, people should be free from, I'm reading this now, free from interference with their privacy, family, home, or correspondence. And then also around free expression, that people should have the freedom to receive and impart information and ideas through any media, regardless of frontiers. So like within that, that definition of privacy, we're thinking of protecting two main things. So one is like what falls under that idea of correspondence, your digital, your data and your online activities. And then two, what falls in that idea of like freedom of information is your access to information. And so in the Euki app, we do that again in two main ways. So number one, we do not collect any user data. We do not collect user health data when folks input, data about their menstrual cycle or other health or body symptoms, lifestyle changes, whatever they log in the app stays on their device. There is no backend. There is no place where we ever collect or see that data. And number two, we don't track their activity within the app. So this includes like an account anonymity. So we don't have user accounts. They don't have to sign up with an email or password, an email or phone. And then we also have a private in-app browser. So sometimes we think of like content in our app as like a 101, and then we refer to trusted resources that are research-based that have more in-depth explanations. And when you click links within the app, it opens in a private in-app browser, which does not log on our end the sites they visited. The sites they visit, we can't control what they do. We can't control what the internet provider does, but on our end, we don't track what they're doing. And then the second piece of like access to information is just offline friendliness, so that folks can, whatever their internet situation is, or if they want to be more discreet, be in airplane mode, they can access almost all of the features. We want to make sure it's affordable, so it's no cost to use, and that's easy for people to use, and it's designed. All of the content is written to be accessible to different literacy levels, and folks who might not have as much context about sexual and reproductive health. And then, of course, we have like security features, so PIN protection, data deletion, and those are optional. So that's like how we think about privacy.
Right.
Okay, then consent is a very important concept in sexual health. Tech broadly has a pretty lax approach to consent. So for us, the way we think about consent is that anytime we're asking users to give up any kind of privacy or make any like changes from the defaults I described a second ago, it's that it will be consentful. So that means three things. One, freely given, in a literal sense, like it shouldn't cost money. You don't have to pay for privacy. Like it's not a privilege only for those who can afford it.
It's a universal human right, as you explained.
Period. Yes, period. And then figuratively, like that people aren't being pressured to consent. So we probably all experience this. Like you're trying to get to an app and there's a big thing that pops up and you're like, okay, fine, accept, right?
Yeah, because I'm not going to read all that because I don't understand
it. Exactly. Even I don't always as much as I should. So that they're not pressured, and also that like a lot of times if you opt out of certain things, your experience of the website or the app will be worse. Like certain features won't work for you anymore, or like it will be glitchy. So you're kind of pressured to opt in if you want the best experience. Two is that it should be informed. So kind of like what you're saying, I'm not reading all that. Like users should be aware of the purposes of like whatever data is being collected. They should be aware of the risks, and it should be in transparent and plain language, like not only the full legalese, like I need a JD to understand this language. And then lastly, revocable. So you should be able to withdraw your consent at any time. without consequence.
So you've given a really good explanation. So like, why? But like, can you like explain to folks like why this is so like why it's so important to them to use a tech solution that doesn't collect people's data, that respects your privacy and is consentful?
Yeah. So number one is just, why wouldn't you? Like, I always like to invert that question of why have we accepted the norm of like, if we were today starting like to design to, like, we wouldn't we wouldn't be like, yes, we should do it the way we are currently doing it. From
I mean, that's fair. That's fair.
Right? Like people should have privacy and people should have control over their data, which we call data autonomy. But especially in the context of certain kinds of care and certain kinds of information being criminalized or being censored, it is very important that like to protect ourselves from that risk, that we know that we have control over our data. And it's not just surveillance, of course, there's also like the threat of hacks, which we've seen a number of like pretty prominent data hacks of personal health information. You know, from Planned Parenthood to like 23andMe, there's been pretty prominent hacks in the past couple years. So this type of data, not just your cycle data that might show like if you had or lost a pregnancy for any reason, but also your search history, if it shows that you're searching for certain topics that are where efforts are being made to criminalize or to censor those topics, those can be used in efforts to criminalize people as well. And I want to like not cause a big panic, because I know there's a lot of anxiety around these topics and around the threat of surveillance and threat of criminalization. So as of today, it's so far, and this is late 2024, so it could change. But most criminalization of people seeking abortion or people helping others seek abortion care has happened when somebody that is known to the abortion seeker in real life has reported them. And only then is law enforcement able to then subpoena for specific digital data that they can use in a trial. So we're like, when we talk about our threat modeling or how we think about risk for our users, we're trying to minimize both this like over the shoulder surveillance. So somebody in your life who might not be supportive, like looking over your shoulder and monitoring you, or like there's a shared home computer and there's your search history is there. We're trying to reduce that kind of over the shoulder surveillance. And then also the secondary kind of digital surveillance from subpoenas and other efforts. So yeah, I just want to say like, it's not, there is a lot of data on us out there, and it doesn't mean like you're automatically going to be criminalized like right off the bat because you used a phone. Like, yeah, I just want people to know like they can and still should get the care they need. And there's tools like Euki and a number of other tools that can help you do that in a safer way.
Thank you so much for that measured response, because you are right. There is a lot of, these are interesting times, as you know. So I appreciate your measured response. I'm also keenly aware, as you are as well, that reproductive care is becoming highly politicized. And so I'm curious, like, what unexpected challenges did you encounter while building Euki?
Yeah, I think one is just that privacy. So some on product, some on like our user engagement and growth, and some on fundraising. Like on product, what our approach to data privacy is just so far outside of the norm that in some cases we've had to either like had a hard time finding developers that knew how to build tech without you having some of these like back-end systems or that we're willing to, or like that we could explain why we were doing it that way. I think also, you know, developers skew to a certain gender. And so finding developers that have the experience of menstruation and yeah, enough said. And then as like my role is mainly on the growth side, and we've already seen like already today how much censorship there is where our content, even before we added our new abortion care navigator feature, our content was already getting flagged for review. It was already getting suppressed on some of the major tech platforms. And then I think for us, like a tricky part of fundraising is some repro or sexual health funders are hesitant to fund like apps and digital tools. And some of the privacy ethical tech funders are hesitant to fund sexual health. And so because we're kind of at that niche, it's sometimes been a challenge.
That I feel like is something we could like devote an entire hour conversation to, like all three of those things. But we don't have that kind of time. So I will ask you, like, these are unexpected challenges you encountered, but I'm curious, like, on the flip side, like, were there unexpected wins and sources of support that you encountered while building Euki?
Yeah, many. And that's what keeps it going, I think. So I'll do the same, like product, user engagement, and funders. So product is just honestly the level of support and collaboration from other like grassroots partners. We've had a number of abortion funds, and folks who work at abortion funds provide input at every stage of the app. We've had privacy technical experts provide feedback, and then other reproductive health tech organizations. So we partner really closely with I Need an A, and actually use their data set in our app. And a number of other examples like that within the space of just the collaboration has been amazing. On the user engagement, like simply the best part of my job is meeting like Euki users in the wild. And funny stories at the Camelback event that y'all had for us in November. We were talking to a potential funder, and somebody like popped in, somebody who I had never met popped into the conversation like, are you talking about Euki, the period track? I use that. And told us like, I've been a Euki user for 2 years, I love it. And we were like, we did not pay this, I've never seen this person, we did not like. So just like little moments like that are make it so worthwhile, because like on our side we have no idea, like we cannot, I don't even have names of Euki users, right? Like, so yeah. And then I think the funders who do get it and who have been supportive, and not just funders, but like door openers, connectors like you, Selam, have been just so supportive and like go out of their way to mention us in spaces where we're not, to open doors and to connect us. And we're just like so deeply appreciative of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I started, like, I hinted at this, but I just want to say it again. Like, I know Yuki's, I think, pushing the boundaries of like what tech could be, right? I think you're right. Like when you're talking about developers, like there is this like assumption of like tech must be built in this way, and you must collect this type of data, and you will do data like you'll use it in this way. And I'm like, no, you and Yuki's questioning all of that. It like forced me to question a lot of the assumptions I had about what tech was. Sure, I was really excited that you came to talk to us, so thank you again for that. I will end this conversation by asking you, like, what's next for Euki? How can people connect with you to learn more?
Yeah. So again, we just released a Care Navigator feature, which I just mentioned, which now means that users can, in the same app, they notice a late or missed cycle, they can search for information about different types of abortion, decide, make an informed decision for themselves, and they can even now search for abortion care providers and practical support. So like abortion funds that can help with cover the costs or help coordinate logistics, all in the same app, all without us collecting any of their data. So we're so excited about that. We're trying to get the word out. So in order to do that, it really helps if people follow us. I think there's links here to some of our, there we go, to our socials. It also helps if you are able to support financially. We have, so you can get to it through that Linktree link, or you can type in bit.ly/donate-Euki and donate directly to us. And then, any other information is on our website, eukiapp.com.